No. Get up nice and close, please, because we want to get a group photo of all of you. So we need you up nice and close. All right, we got 1 minute. 1 minute. Come on in, ladies. Come on in. Stacy, stay accessible. You're first. We're getting the heat turned up for you, so I know it's a little chilly right now. It'll warm up. I'm just going to get started real quick. Thanks for coming, you guys. I'm Carrie Bulmer. I'm the Women's Ministry Coordinator. But this doesn't happen with one person. This happens with a full team, which was led by Rebecca Furnival, wherever she is. Where is Rebecca? She's not in here yet. But anyway, we'll clap for her again a little bit later. But I want you guys to know about Orono Woodlands. Does anybody know that they're our next door neighbor? Some people know. I didn't know until this year that we have a group home right next door, and we're going to try and reach out to them as much as we can. And Stacy Royal has an excellent relationship with them and has already done some stuff for them. And all your donations tonight are going to the Christmas gifts for the residents there. So, and the little Christmas gift list is out there just so you guys know what is being purchased. Stacy Royal will come on up and she'll tell you a little bit more about that organization.
I promise to be quick so that we can not miss any time with the rest of the event. So Orono Woodlands, we signed up to do Serve Day with the group at Orono Woodlands with my kids to decorate pumpkins. And I'd always heard about Orono Woodlands, but I'd never been over there. I didn't really know what it was about. And there are 6 adults that live there, 4 women and 2 men, and they all have severe disabilities of varying degrees. And so I just want to tell you a story about one of the residents that's there. It's a man, and he was sitting down with us, and he was painting the pumpkins, and then he'd get up and he'd walk around, and then he'd sit back down, and he'd get up and he'd walk around, and my husband does that all the time. So my husband was with us, and he's like, I really relate to him. I don't know what it is. I'm like, I know what it is. But he just was a very neat guy to watch. And they did some outdoor cleanup, and my husband went and was like, well, this is great that he's with us and he's helping do everything. And the ladies that were out there, they said, oh, this won't last. he just wants one thing. So he walked down to the shed with them, and there was a box of trophies there, and he just wanted a trophy. So he got his trophy, and then he stopped helping because he had his trophy and he was walking around. So then the next day, I went over to help do some cleanup for them, some leaf cleanup, and he came out and he was in a costume. And I said, "Oh, you're a clown for Halloween." And they said, "You mean he's a trophy?" And I'm like, because he gave me kind of a dirty look, and I'm like, "You're a trophy." They said he didn't want to be a clown. He's a trophy, and he had on his #1 clown trophy tag that said what he was. So we might not be able to understand exactly what they're thinking and saying, but the staff that works with them were able to communicate and understand and know exactly what they want. So by developing relationships with these people, either by helping out cleaning leaves or doing things, eventually you understand kind of what they're saying and what they're needing and things like that. And I just think to myself, if this was one of my family members, just knowing that there are people out there that are willing to help or even try to communicate with them, because whether it's a brother or a father or a mother or sister, they're still a human being, and they are wonderful people. And even though he couldn't stay sitting with us for more than 5 minutes, maybe my husband can't either. So I understand that hyperactivity. But they're a great group of people, and they have a lot of needs right now. So thanks for doing this tonight, Carrie.
Thank you, Stacy. On a side note, her son did his service project and raised money by having a little kids sale at the church, and all those funds are going to go towards iPads for the staff there to be able to manage the space a little bit better. So we're on to the big show, Christy Morse. I'm very excited, and a lot of people, I didn't know her personally, and she's been going to our church for 37 plus years she's been a member of our church. So this is just what I'm going to tell you that we have in common with her. She goes to church with us if you go to Trinity, and that her mother and her grandmother were also members of Trinity, and all of her children were baptized here. So she has an extremely impressive bio that I could not possibly summarize. So I just want you to know that she's just one of us. So, Christy Morse.
Thank you. All right, I think we're on. So I just want to say, to start off, good evening, and I'm delighted to be here with you tonight. When Rebecca asked if I would share my story of philanthropy, I was truly honored. I want to let you know that there are parts of this story where I might get emotional. My girls know this. So I'm asking you now for your understanding on those parts. As the title of my presentation says, I'm here today to tell you a story of women who cared deeply for each other as well as for the world. Margaret Cargill, me, and a friend named Kathy, and how our paths brought us together into the world of philanthropy. Before I tell our story, I want to mention that not only us, but many, many people were part of this story, and many women in particular played crucial roles. But in the end, it took Margaret Cargill, guided by her faith and her concern for the people of the world, to envision the organizations that combine now to stand among the 10 largest philanthropies in the United States. And it was up to me and Kathy to help that vision take shape and become a reality. So let me start with some history. Margaret Ann Cargill was born in 1920, the granddaughter of William Wallace Cargill, which made her an heiress to the Cargill family wealth. When she died in 2006, she was the company's largest single shareholder, owning 17% of the outstanding stock. Margaret grew up in Minnesota, and her father, Austin Cargill, and her brother, later her brother James, were both senior executives of Cargill Incorporated. Well, she grew up in comfort, Her parents instilled in her a strong ethic of work and tradition, and traditional values that we both thought of as Midwestern values. And she took those into her adulthood. Margaret herself was never directly involved with the company. Her interests were in the arts and the outdoors. She earned a degree in art education from the University of Minnesota in 1954, and as a young woman, she loved to travel. Much of her travel revolved around her interests in arts and crafts, particularly Native American and folk art, fiber arts, and weaving and jewelry making. In the mid-1950s, Margaret moved to Southern California, where her parents had retired. She lived the rest of her life in La Jolla. Her lifestyle was quiet and unassuming, and many of her closest friends were unaware of her connection to the company. And they certainly had no idea that she was an heiress. She was just another parishioner at the Episcopal Cathedral in San Diego. My own path to Margaret and to philanthropy, began with a long career in business. My father owned a company that manufactured agricultural equipment, and starting as a teenager, I did the accounting. When my father died suddenly, my mother and I ran the company until we could sell it. I then married Terry, and we finished college at Gustavus Adolphus in St. Peter. With an accounting degree from Gustavus, a deep understanding of the agricultural industry, I was recruited by Cargill in 1977 as a management trainee. In fact, I was part of the first training group with a significant number of women in it. Working for a complex and global company was a wonderful experience, and it turned out to be excellent training for what lay ahead. I took a leave from Cargill in 1991 to become the first visiting professor to fill the endowed C. Charles Jackson Chair in Finance and Accounting at Gustavus. When it was time to return to Cargill, I was offered the opportunity to be a vice president and controller at Waycross, the family office of the Cargill and Macmillan family, owners of Cargill, Inc. A family office provides a wide array of services to the family members, from financial advice to estate planning to working with experts in tax and legal. Working in the family office was interesting. During my time there, I became a certified financial planner and made use of my certified credit executive designation. At Waycross, I was assigned to work with several Cargill family members, including Margaret. Our relationship started out as strictly business. I began writing to her in 1991, and we finally met face-to-face in 1993. It was a challenge, but my mother encouraged me to continue trying to reach out to her. I wrote to her about every other week. She did not respond, but I continued, slowly changing my communications to include not only business, but very personal information about myself and my family. Our relationship grew over time into what was a deeply personal one of friendship and trust. We discovered that we had a lot in common, despite our age difference. Several instant and important connections were our Minnesota roots and our faith. Yet another was that we were both women. She appreciated the opportunity to work with a businesswoman, because women of her generation were not involved in business. And in fact, they were often at a very distinct disadvantage because financial information was not routinely shared with them. She trusted me to help her with things that were deeply personal to her. So from managing the remodel of her home, to finding a Swedish chef for her, to shopping for cars and RVs, I also managed her financial affairs, such as insurance and taxes, and eventually I handled her personal health care. One evening, after spending the day together, she asked me a very important and a very difficult question. She asked that I make a commitment to her to never leave her. I told her I had to think about it, and I had to think about it very carefully. I went back to my hotel and I prayed for guidance. Sorry. And eventually it became clear to me that my commitment was important to both of us. We both treasured our friendship, and we continued to become closer and closer. As her focus turned to giving back to others through philanthropy, I helped her turn that into reality. Margaret's other trusted advisor was Kathy Hopper, a retired assistant superintendent of schools of the San Diego school system. Kathy and Margaret had been friends for more than 30 years, and Kathy and I developed a very strong bond. She too had a firm and deep faith in God that she put into action in her volunteer work at the Episcopal Cathedral in San Diego. Perhaps the most important connection among the three of us was the realization that we had these common and deeply held values. Values that were rooted in the Christian tradition that we had been raised in. Together, Kathy and I helped Margaret understand the magnitude of her wealth, which she did not understand when I met her, and also the impact that it could have, how she could make a lasting difference in her own community and beyond. She asked Kathy and me to help her put that wealth to good work in the world. I want to stress, too, that Margaret felt her wealth was not something she had personally earned. I spent a lot of time reviewing her finances with her, and she appreciated that her father had worked very hard to build the Cargill business and create her wealth. She viewed it as a great gift, one that she had been entrusted with, and one that could do great good. Another important point is that Margaret understood that as a Cargill family member, her relatives did not need her financial generosity. They were already heirs to the Cargill wealth. So she decided to make her philanthropy the focus of her estate planning. She became interested in supporting organizations that contributed to the quality of life in Southern California. In the early 1990s, she gave generously to organizations that were important to her. Those primarily were in San Diego. And at the same time, I helped her give anonymously, which was difficult to do in a tight-knit community like San Diego. Her desire to increase her giving and do it anonymously, and her recognition that wealth was a gift that had been given to her, led us to create a formal philanthropic organization. First, Kathy and I encouraged Margaret to articulate her philanthropic goals. What issues were important to her and which were not? Which organizations or types of organizations did she want to support? And likewise, which did she not want to fund? Were there certain places or groups of people that were important to her? How did she want her philanthropy to express her beliefs and her concern for others? We also made sure that Margaret had the legal and financial resources she needed to fully explore the options available to her, and then to bring to life what she wanted to do. In 1995, we created the Akaloa Resource Foundation. The name satisfied Margaret's need for anonymity, and it held great personal significance for her, as Akaloa was thought to mean wind through the pines, and that was a strong connection for her to God's gift and to her love of nature. Akaloa was a supporting organization, which means that it was allowed to fund only nonprofits that were named in the formation documents, and in this case, those were chosen by Margaret. The supporting organization structure aligned with her values. She preferred an approach to giving that relied on close, deep relationships with the organization working on the issues that she cared about. The beneficiaries Margaret chose for Akaloa were organizations that she knew and respected for the work they did on those issues that were important. With the organizations she wished to support identified, Akaloa began grant-making very slowly. The first board consisted of Margaret, her attorney, me, and Kathy. We knew we had a lot to learn about philanthropy before we rushed in. We started getting to know the organization slowly, one by one, and that helped us understand Margaret's charitable interests and her giving philosophy, which we later documented into her guiding principles. Some of these principles included a desire to help others help themselves, to be willing to fund low attention and underserved areas, to work more at an individual and community level rather than policy, and to consider innovative approaches, including technology. These principles continue to shape our grant making to this day. In 1996, we created a second philanthropy, the Anne Ray Charitable Trust, named after her mother, Anne Ray Cargill. Anne Ray was also a supporting organization with a list of designated beneficiaries. Similar to Akaloa, these were named and selected for their ability to work in program areas of interest to Margaret, although they were generally broader and in some cases they were global. I want to mention one Anne Ray beneficiary in particular since it's close to home for us in the Twin Cities. Margaret and I had previously made anonymous donations to the American Swedish Institute in Minneapolis, and so through Anne Ray we were able to continue that support. Over time, Akaloa and Anne Ray slowly ramped up grant making as Margaret contributed additional assets during her lifetime. As our grant making grew, we felt it was important to have impartial third parties document her intent. There we go. We did that with two people that I had been working with, Paul and Naomi, who had the same values as the original three of us did. We documented her wishes carefully with a focus on what drove her interests, and she revealed what she wanted to support, what she didn't want to support, laying out her preferences. And so as her estate planning continued, we recognized that the supporting organization structure didn't really allow for the kind of unforeseen things that could happen in the future. What if one or more designated organizations went out of existence or merged with a different organization? Or what if one of them changed its mission to something that Margaret did not want to support? So at the same time as we were considering all this, Kathy and I were urging her to allow us to use her name. She adamantly refused, arguing that recognition should go to the organizations who were doing the important work on the ground, not to her as a donor. We respected her desire to be anonymous during her lifetime, but we also felt strongly that her incredible kindness and generosity deserved to be recognized in the future. Eventually, she agreed to name a traditional private foundation, the Margaret A. Cargill Foundation. This foundation would have much more flexibility to choose grantees based on her interests, but the foundation would only come into being at her death. Margaret did not assign priorities to her interests. She left it up to us as the future leaders of the organization to do that. But she did lay out a common mission and guiding principles. She saw the separate foundations as parts of one philanthropy, what we call now the Margaret A. Cargill Philanthropies. Margaret passed away on August 1st, 2006, at the age of 85. I had been visiting her as I did for a week every month, and we had spent a whole day reliving wonderful memories, laughing and telling stories about our times together. When I left, I knew in my heart that she was saying goodbye. Sorry. I returned to Minnesota only to be called back to California the next day. A priest who was also a close friend told me that she didn't believe that Margaret was going to pass away until I got there. In fact, she waited until I was there to be with her. Those of us who were with her sang and prayed by her bedside. She allowed me to meet my commitment to a woman I loved. She died in the comfort of her home, surrounded by those of us who loved her. So, to be honest, that was a very difficult time in my life. And other than my husband and my beloved children, I had lost all the people that I was closest to, the people that I spoke to every day of my life. I lost them all in a span of less than 2 years. My mother passed away first. Margaret's brother, who I was very close to, passed away in March of 2006. My best friend died in July, and Margaret passed away in August. And then finally, Kathy died in November the following year. My faith in God and the love of my family are what kept me going. Kathy's passing left me in the sad and very difficult position of being the last of the original 3 planners and implementers of Margaret's wishes. My colleague, Paul Bush, took Kathy's place on the boards as my co-trustee of the and also as my co-trustee of the estate. It took us 5 years to settle her estate. One of the big challenges Paul and I faced was to find a path to liquidity, a way to turn her Cargill shares into cash that we could use for grant making. On May 25th, 2011, after years of negotiation with the company and planning, we entered into a transaction with Cargill Incorporated, and our stock was exchanged for some of Cargill's shares in a publicly held company called Mosaic. The transaction was designed to benefit all the shareholders. For us, it provided liquidity, and it freed Margaret's shares for the benefit of charitable organizations. What the 2011 transaction meant was that finally our focus could fully shift to grant making. Margaret A. Cargill Foundation developed strategies very carefully after reviewing and thinking about what she wanted us to support. Even with a large asset base, there's never enough to solve every problem everywhere in the world. Margaret A. Cargill Foundation, the Foundation's environment program, was the first grant-making program we started, the first one we chose to develop. And our early grants were made very shortly after the transaction was completed and were to benefit nonprofits working in the Great Bear and Tongass region of Western Canada, also southern Alaska, and, interestingly enough, the Micronesia Conservation Trust on the other side of the world. By the end of 2011, we as trustees also approved a grant to support a major new initiative in community-based conservation of coral reefs and fisheries in Indonesia. Indonesia, and this area in particular, is the most biodiverse area in the world, as well as a major population center where fisheries are vital to people's existence and to their daily life. Early on, we also launched an effort to support capital projects at private liberal arts colleges in Minnesota, supporting areas such as environmental education, sustainability-focused internships, renovated facilities for general health and science, nursing education, and music. These were quickly followed by our disaster relief work, with grants related to flooding in North Dakota, tornadoes in Minnesota, Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Alabama. All of this in 2011. These grants are examples of the guidance that Margaret gave us to fund low-attention areas. Our research had showed that natural disasters on the east, west, and southern coasts receive significantly more media attention and charitable dollars than disasters that occur elsewhere. That's why our disaster grant making is now focused on our nation's midsection. Our third program to launch Arts and Cultures, began supporting Native arts and cultures initiatives in the Pacific Northwest in 2012. Now we've expanded our funding into areas such as folk arts and arts education. We work in the Southwest, Midwest, and the Appalachian region. Since then, these 3 programs have continued to build their grant-making portfolios. And we have also launched aging services and animal welfare grant-making in the U.S. Globally, we have funded learning grants in areas ranging from vaccination programs to neglected tropical diseases to maternal and child health. As Margaret A. Cargill Foundation began this early grant-making, additional liquidity also allowed the Anne Ray Charitable Trust to significantly ramp up that grant-making. Okay, on to the next one. Help, Charlie. I have it on, but it's not going. Oh, there's a little picture of our work in Indonesia. Oops. Oh, and there's one in Appalachia. Okay. Oh, we got lots of pictures here. I had forgotten that. Oh, and that's British Columbia. That's the tribes of the western coast of Canada. And here are all the little dots for places where we have done grant making. So this shows you the growth in our grant making between 1996 and 2015. See if I can get this to keep going. Yeah. So while our grant making started small, as you can see from those little tiny bars, it grew rapidly and exponentially, particularly in recent years as we've achieved our full liquidity. To give you an idea of what this looks like in financial terms, in 2008, we made just over $12 million in grants. That's way over on this end. In 2012, 4 years later, that number grew to $71 million in grants. And in 2015 alone, that year alone, across our 3 entities, our ongoing grant making was just shy of $257 million. Those yearly numbers have obviously grown dramatically, as you can see here. But what makes a particular impact on me is when I look at the growth in our grant making over time. Those very first Akaloa grants made in 1995, as we celebrated 20 years of grant making 2 years ago in December of 2015, the Margaret A. Cargill philanthropies as a whole had made more than $1 billion in grants, and we considered that a milestone. So, to support these activities and what is required to surround that level of grant making, our MACP staff has grown too. From 3 of us who could sit around Margaret's dinner table to a team of over 90 people. Because we are a relatively young philanthropy, I think we have a distinct advantage that we still have a very close connection to our founder and her vision. But there are also approaches to our work that we think make us unique and different from many of other philanthropies that are our peers. We now operate 2 legal entities with a common vision, mission, values, and shared philosophy. And I think there are a few other things that set us apart as a philanthropy as well. We consider ourselves stewards of our founder's values, her style, and her vision. As I mentioned, we and the future leaders are fortunate enough to have guidance from Margaret, and it is truly at the heart of how we operate. Oop, there we go. We've spent a lot of time thinking and clarifying our organizational values in a manner that applies to how we do our work every day. We have identified 6 cultural values that you see here that define us as an organization. Making a difference, excellence, integrity, respect, learning, and humility. If you can see, and you might not be able to, but if you could see our definitions, you'd see that they are actions. We expect our employees to demonstrate these actions externally with our grantees and internally with each other. I will mention one specifically, and that is learning, because it is so integral to our DNA. From our early due diligence to our many learning grants, to our commitment to incorporating evaluation into our grant making. And humility is unique not just as a cultural value, but in how we define it. The note that you see up here is deliberately in quotation marks because they are the words Margaret used all the time. She would say to me, "It's not about me, it's not about us. I just have the money. It's the good work that the people who are doing it that should get the attention." So the attention we put now is on our grantees, those people who are doing the hard work out around the world. These values are incorporated into everything we do, from our interviewing and onboarding of new employees, to our strategic planning, and to our program evaluation. Okay. We look to our key grantees as partners, and they help us shape what we do. So as we build our program strategies, we ask how a given approach addresses our core values and the difference in the world that we and Margaret intended. As we evaluate potential grantees, how they do their work is very important, especially how it reflects the respect they have for their partners and how it reflects on the people in the communities where they operate. None of these factors are necessarily individually make us unique, but I think the combination of them truly does make us a different type of philanthropy. So, here we are. We started with one woman's giving within her community, grew that into 2 formal foundations. We built a 3rd after her death, and have come together as one philanthropic organization. Margaret's financial legacy has given us avenues to achieve things that she could only have dreamed of. For me, I look back to my early 20s, doing the books for my family business at my father's factory, and I could not have imagined what God's plan was for me. The path that my life would take, the path my career would take, this path. I certainly would not have predicted that a client relationship could turn into such a deep and life-altering relationship. Margaret and I both believed that God wanted us to find each other. We just needed to listen. Margaret was not always an easy person to be around, and I was likely a challenge for her sometimes too. And that's because we're humans, with all the quirks and the failings that humanity involves. I could not have predicted that I would encounter someone like Margaret, or that philanthropy would become the focus of my career and my life. Margaret has been and will remain in my heart and on my mind constantly as I work. I have announced my retirement as Chief Executive Officer of the Philanthropies as of January 2018. But I am blessed to be able to continue in my role as chair of the boards, so I will still be involved in governance, program strategy, and grant making going forward. I believe one of my obligations is to instill her wishes and her values into the Margaret A. Cargill Philanthropies organization. Instill them into perpetuity, just as we invest our financial assets to allow us to continue to make grants in perpetuity, forever in her name. If I succeed, and I am determined to do so, I will instill her wishes to help others, and I will instill them into the organization and the people that are there doing her good work. God provided me with what at the time was a totally unknown opportunity. The result was a challenging and loving relationship that allowed both Margaret and me to put our love into action to help other people and benefit God's creation. Thank you.
It'd be a shame to miss this opportunity to ask any questions. So if anyone has any questions, I can bring the mic to you. We're just going to take a couple minutes if anybody has anything. If not, I mean, that was the full story, that's for sure. Anybody have anything? I was super touched by your relationship, and you had me tearing up over here, and I wondered, where's the Kleenex? But I knew if I ran away, I'd miss you and whatever. But I just really, really appreciate you, and what an unbelievable privilege your life has been to make these big decisions. So thank you. Let's give another round of applause. And we'll just have to bugger at church if we have a question. Okay, on to the future of Trinity women here. Charlie, I thought I did it right. Alt. I don't know. I'm doing Alt Tab, right? Oh, that might do it. All right, Charlie, sorry. Our token male is going to have to come over here. Solve my problems. So terrible. Oh. It's Charlie Allen, by the way. So coming up in January is a Trinity Women movie night opportunity, and it's a movie where you have to sponsor it, host it, in order for it to show, but you have to sell a minimum amount of tickets in order for the movie to show. So basically, if you've seen anything from the emails or whatnot, you reserve your tickets, but you won't be charged for it until we sell enough of them. We reserve enough of them. So the movie is called, I can't even remember what the movie is. Are you having any luck? Women Like Us. Documentary. Yeah. You know what? You can't hear that.
I want women to forget the shoulds, to follow their heart, to take time to center, know what it is that they believe in, and stepping out and making it happen.
The only way to bring about change is via education. Educate a girl, and you've educated a generation.
can't just take a girl off the street is because they don't know that they need to be saved. What's always been seen as just prostitution is and has always been slavery.
So if you can just affect one person to let them know that they are special and they mean something to you, you can make a difference.
Your basic abilities matter and can be a miracle in someone else's life.
The fact that our little bit of resources could make such an impact on them.
Quality education for women gives them the power to conquer the universe.
This is just such an exciting time to be a woman.
It's wonderful to have women stepping up to the plate and doing things without fear.
Women rock. Like, we're needed. Like, we give life. You can't make it without a woman.
I want people to be inspired to be that person that says, I'm not going to wait for someone else to do it. I'm going to be that one that does it.
Hope you got the idea there. I know the volume wasn't very loud. But if you just reserve your seats, you can share it with friends, family, anybody. It's open to the public. So it's not just Trinity women, but whoever is a Trinity woman or community friends, we're going to do happy hour or something before that. So be sure to reserve your seats. And then that's what's happening in January. And then in February, we have our women's retreat. And Carrie Newell is the lead on our women's retreat. She's going to mention a couple things real quick.
All right. Actually, after looking at this, a little promo for that movie, our retreat will be a good follow-up to that. The theme of the retreat this year is Be the Light. So we would invite all of you to come and let your light shine. We are going to have food, fellowship, fun, workshops, a keynote speaker. Kind of all of it will be revolving or exploring ways that you can go out and be the light to others. Our keynote speaker is Jody Hogue. She is a pastor at the Humble Walk Church in St. Paul. She began that church in 2008 and she began it in a coffee shop in her last year of seminary. And it has grown and become quite a blessing to many people. So we invite all of you to come and join us as we be the light, let our light shine, and learn ways that we can bring the light to others. So I'm just going to read a couple verses here. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and praise your Father in heaven. Matthew 5:16. You are light in the world. Live as children of the light. Ephesians 5:8. Those are kind of what we're basing our retreat upon. So please come, have fun. It's February 9th and 10th, so that's a Friday night and Saturday, and it's right here at Trinity. But you get to go home and sleep in your own bed. You don't have to stay here. You don't have to stay in a hotel. You don't have to travel. So the retreat is here, and it will be quite a joy, and it would be great to have you. So please come.
Thank you, Carrie. And as always, it's always open to everyone. You do not have to be a member of Trinity. We're just trying to support our community of women, so it's not just for us, it's for everyone. If right now we're going to do our gift exchange, so I'll just challenge you to all move towards the tree, grab a present, does not have to be your present, and we're going to make a big giant circle, and we're going to do our gift exchange. This could be challenging. If you did not bring a gift, we have some extras. Look at that. We're getting a circle. We're getting there. I'm going to push this in. I'm going to push it towards the center. I'm going to just get room around here. And you guys can keep... You got to be shoulder to shoulder, girls. You need to be able to pass a gift without throwing it. Did you guys bring gifts? We didn't bring gifts. I have extras. And the party doesn't end until 9, so you don't have to go anywhere. We're just going to do the gift exchange. So you're staying. Okay. Does anybody remember last year we had Joyce Trio did a little dance routine for us? I wonder if she'll do that again. You gonna go that way? All right, I think we're almost there. Make sure you got room to pass the gift. Okay. Does everybody have a spot? There's Joyce. Yay! I know. All right, is everybody ready? You know what? Before we start, yeah, I have everyone's attention. Before we start, let's do a quick prayer because this is amazing having all you women here, and everybody looks so fabulous in black and white and sparkle, bling, and red.